Humans are strange. Inanimate objects. Quillith, can you aid me? Quillith glanced over at his superior as he entered the room. The chief cultural anthropologist was crouched over the main data screen in their office. Quillith balanced the vials in his manipulators and rotated uneasily. "Can it wait a moment, Tracker?" he replied. "I need to place the samples from the hellbats in the refrigerator." "Make sure you place them in the sample refrigerator," Tracker reminded him sternly. "But yes, that will be acceptable." Quillith rotated and hurried to put the nutrient samples in the racks of the refrigeration unit. He made sure their labels were clearly visible and scurried back to where Tracker was flicking various symbols across the visual display screen. Quillith aligned his primary eyes with the screen and tilted his abdomen to the side thoughtfully. "Is this one of those human word puzzles?" he asked. Tracker let out a chitter of irritation and swept a primary manipulator across the control surface, realigning the letters in the orderly rows the humans preferred. "Betty," Quillith read, "a common derivative of a human name, female, I believe." Yes, Tracker said. "I am aware of that. However, the base command transport has no sex so far as I know." Quillith let his secondary eyes take in the stressed commander. Had he been getting sufficient nutrients lately? In lieu of a proper field medic, it was Quillith's task to ensure the base crew maintained their health. "Oh, Swarm!" Tracker snapped his mandibles at Quillith. "Do stop thinking so loudly. I am fine." "You know your inappropriate use of that term has the humans thinking we are telepathic," Quillith reprimanded him. "I take zero responsibility for what humans think," Tracker said. "Now this," he waved at the offending female name. "This is exactly why Mechanic Steve has named the command Transport Betty." Quillith felt his joints loosen with relief. "Oh yes, they do that," he said. "The transports that drop off the humans are in fact listed by their names rather than their identification numbers in the files for the foodstuffs." "I am aware," Quillith Tracker said, rubbing the ridges over his eyes. "If you read the functional briefing on humans, it lists that facet of their behavior. It also lists that only refers to ships of a certain mass." "I was not aware of that," Quillith said. "But Mechanic Steve has named a wheeled vehicle far below the tonnage requirements, Betty," Tracker said. "I assume you have tried simply asking him," Quillith said. He muttered something inaudible and walked away after I asked why he had given an inanimate object a name, Tracker replied. "Since then I have been operating under the assumption that it is some form of what the humans call an acronym." "Well," Quillith began to back slowly away. "I will get back to my nutrient analysis." "One day we will understand the humans," Tracker muttered to himself as he bent back over the control panel. "One day." Quillith made a mental note to check on Tracker's nutrient intake. Sometimes odd behavior was explainable by poor diet. On another leg, sometimes it was just prolonged exposure to humans. Humans are strange. Didn't see it. Flash fiction. Wait a moment. Twist Under tensed his appendages as he tried to process what the human had said. "You possess the ability to map out waveforms with specialized organs. With this ability you can make astounding scientific observations, take out opposing warriors by propelling rocks at them from a distance, and can judge the mood of fellows from across the room. And you sometimes walk into your crew members because you just ignore this sense." The human in front of him shifted uneasily on her bean bag and took a deep breath. "Well, yes. I just didn't see Girl Smith," repeated. Twist Under rubbed his gripping appendages together in frustration. This new species was decidedly confusing. Humans are strange. Boredom. Master linguist. The hesitant voice pulled the linguist's attention away from his work on the datapad beneath him and up to the young one who crouched at the door. The master linguist let his vision slide over the youth, taking in the tightly held legs and the thorax pressed tightly to the floor. The apprentice linguist was nervous, excited, and probably shocked. "Please come and loosen," the master linguist urged him. The apprentice came forward with jerky movements and made a brave show of attempting to relax. The master linguist tucked his datapad away and moved over to run a soothing leg over the top of the apprentice's thorax. When the young one had sufficiently calmed, he began to loosen and rose to a more comfortable stance. "You taught me that some of the greatest cultural discoveries happen not when you find the words that match, but the words that have no direct translation, the ones we have to write whole paragraphs to describe." "Yes," the master linguist agreed. And why is this? Strange words describe strange ideas, the apprentice quoted. If they gave it a word, it is very important to them. If we did not, it is elementally alien to us. And you think you found one of these critical words? The master linguist urged him gently on. The apprentice waved one foreleg in distracted agreement, and the master linguist stiffened a bit. If it was not the trepidation of bearing an astounding claim to a skeptical superior, what was causing his distress? The humans. The apprentice began. The master twitched. Oh, of course, the humans. They have a word that means they are suffering because there are not enough threats in their immediate environment. The soldiers on the base, they say they are bored. Humans are strange. Rituals. Hey Twistbud, Mike Dodge called out from the open refrigeration unit. Have you seen the bottle of chilled acetone? The human continued to paw through the bright orange unit, causing a clacking of various containers and a rustling of sample bags. After a few moments passed with no response, he lifted his head from his search and stared across the small laboratory with an annoyed frown on his unshaven face. Twist under, Mike said with a bit of a snap in his voice. However, despite the display of irritation in the much larger human, the undulate sat still on the counter that lined the far wall. Mike frowned and closed the unit. He walked toward his friend. Twist, he said, that was not a rhetorical question if you were wondering. He frowned as he considered Twist under. The undulate had balled himself up in what Mike might have called a thinking loaf position, but something was different. All of Twist's many appendages were tucked tightly under him, too tightly. He looked less like a bread loaf and more like a bundle of rope someone had tightened too far. Twist, Mike asked, real concern in his voice now. He reached out to touch the undulate but hesitated. He instead held out his hand palm down and then violently twisted his fingers in a clockwise motion, moving his wrist as little as possible. Twist under started, a tremor running through his body, before his gripping appendages appeared and reared up in a soothing greeting. Friend Mike, Twist under said, his voice flat with distraction. Forgive me, I was lost in thought. You okay, bud? Asked with a frown. Are you dehydrated? Do you need a sink bath? No, Twist under assured him. I am fine. I could use a drink though. Let me grab one for you, Mike offered. He scooped Twist under up under his arm and headed for the commissary. An odd tremor, one the likes of which Mike had never felt before, ran through Twist under's body, and the human glanced down at the undulate in surprise. Are you sure you're okay, Twist? He asked again. I'm fine, Twist under insisted, his voice firm this time, showing that he was at least aware enough to give it human-specific emotional overtones. I am just processing disturbing concepts. Mike nodded as they reached the now empty commissary, and he set Twist under down on a chair. For some reason, laboratory counters were acceptable perches, but tables and other eating-dedicated surfaces were not. Mike got a glass of water and brought it back to Twist under, who gratefully dropped a few secondary appendages into it. Thank you, friend Mike, Twist under said as the water slowly drained out of the glass. So have you seen the acetone? Mike asked. No, Twist under replied. But I did scent it in the upper cabinets. Thanks, Mike said, rising. I'll just go get that and put it in the fridge to chill. Friend Mike, Twist under asked as Mike reached the door. Do you have a tattoo? Yeah, Mike said with a grin. I'll show you when I get back. That same tremor went across Twist under's body, and Mike shrugged. He put the acetone in the fridge. What idiot left it in the cabinet anyway, and strolled back to Twist under. So tattoos, Mike said with a grin. He hiked his leg up on the chair and went to pull up his pants leg. However, Twist under held out a gripping appendage and gently restrained his hand. Exactly what was the ink made of that was used for your markings? Twist under asked in an oddly neutral tone. Mike arched an eyebrow at that. Carbon black, iron oxide, and silver, he answered. My parents insisted that if I wanted a tat, I learn everything about them. There is no ash in your particular tattoo? Twist under asked, letting a little eagerness slip into his tone. No, Mike said with a grin. Old man Kirkpatrick was trustworthy as they come. He would never cut his ink with anything and not label it. "Oh, then I would very much like to see your body ornamentation," Twist Under said, perking up immediately and spreading out his appendages a bit. Mike smiled and pulled his pants leg up and his sock down. Twist Under eagerly reached out his sensory appendages to examine and touch the small school of tropical fish inked in black on Mike's ankle. "This is a lovely pattern," Twist Under said brightly. "Made of carbon black, you say?" "Yes," Mike confirmed. "What did you think it was made of?" Twist Under hesitated and pulled his appendages back to his sides. "Ah, I do not mean to offend, friend Mike," Twist Under said. "Are you comfortable discussing human death rights?" Mike let out a bark of laughter. "Sure thing, Twist," he assured him. "Well," Twist Under said, "I was talking to Smith 3. Well, that explains things," Mike said, rolling his eyes. "Old 3 is confusing as they get. He showed me his—" Twist Under paused and a shudder ran through his body again. "Commemorative tattoo. And what was the ink in Smith 3's tat made of?" Mike asked, guessing the source of Twist Under's discomfort. "His grandfather," Twist Under said in that same flat tone. Mike stared at Twist Under long enough that Twist Under began to wave his gripping appendages. "Does this disturb you, friend Mike?" Twist Under asked. Mike started. He wondered if the pleased eagerness in Twist Under's tone was deliberate. "That can't be right," Mike sputtered. "Humans don't. I mean not now. I mean how is that even possible?" Smith 3 went into great detail. Twist Under shuddered again, but not so strongly this time. He described how the body was devoured by flames and reduced to carbon and calcium. Then the remains were powdered finely and mixed with the ink that was used to mark his skin. Mike let out a low profanity. Neither Twist Under nor Smith 3 were the kind to make something like this up. "I take it you are disturbed," Twist Under stated. "You think?" Mike demanded. "I do," Twist Under said in satisfaction. "May I sit in your lap and share your warmth and distress?" "Sure, sure," Mike said with a sigh. "I need to finish the experiment, but sure." Twist Under scrambled across the space into his lap and settled into a more proper thinking loaf. Mike sighed and dropped a hand down to stroke his upper side. "Ash," Mike muttered. "Ash," Twist Under confirmed. "Man, humans are strange," Mike observed. "You said it," Twist Under agreed. "Humans are strange. Downgrade. Maria, I will need assistance in the astrometrics department tomorrow," Fourth Sister said as she passed the communal room. Several seconds passed with no response from the human who was sprawled out on the Sharian couch. Fourth Sister tilted her head to the side in irritation. She understood that human joints didn't bend the same way as hers did, but was it truly more comfortable for them to spread out from the floor to the back of the couch in that almost undulate manner? They did have an internal skeleton after all. They should act like it. "Maria," Fourth Sister attempted again, but with no better results. Dr. Torres deciding that she wasn't going to get any response through sound, Fourth Sister reached back and unlimbered her utility rod from its sheath on her back. She eased up to within a length of the couch and lightly rapped an exposed elbow. Maria yelped and scrambled onto the floor. She blinked her odd concentric eyes at Fourth Sister and bared her blocky enameled mandibles in a friendly gesture. Her fibrous frill was formed into twin braids that almost mimicked proper Sharian frills from the southern hemisphere. She had even thoughtfully added bright red ribbons to show her general placid attitude. "What's up, sis?" Maria asked brightly, pulling her headphones back. "I will need your assistance tomorrow," Fourth Sister repeated, laying her frill back carefully to conceal her irritation. It was Maria's day off after all. "The final decision on star cluster radius has come down, and we will need to update the star maps that are not directly connected to the main systems and any printed data." "Cool, FO gotcha," Maria said brightly as she leapt to her feet. Fourth Sister had to fight back another wince as the human towered over her. It was odd going from the tallest species in the Confederation to the second tallest. Odd and unnerving. "Would you like preference on the printer for personal reasons?" Fourth Sister asked. "Why would I need that?" Maria asked in confusion. "This is not your regular duty," Fourth Sister replied. "The base commander likes to make sure that anyone asked to perform outside of their job description gets some reimbursement, even if it is minor." "I know that," Maria said with a dismissive wave. But why would I need access to the printer? Nearly 3/4 of the wall decorations in your room will need to be updated, fourth sister pointed out. Ah! Perhaps you did not realize the decision will affect the Polaris system. Maria fell silent, and fourth sister had to twist her head several times to analyze the wild flush of colors that rushed across the human's face. Are you ill, Maria? She demanded, feeling her frill flatten with concern. Did you get up too fast? Maria snapped her head from side to side, and fourth sister had to remind herself that it was a sign of negation rather than a request for more information. Maria's fleshy mammalian lips opened and closed a few times, and then the colors in her face suddenly cooled. They are reclassifying the Polaris system to what? She finally hissed out. Anger. Fourth sister suddenly realized that widely diffused anger that had no target and left humans so unpredictable. She frantically tried to figure out what had triggered this response in the normally gentle and merry human. They simply clarified that the outer 2 stars are not a part of the core system, making the actual system a tertiary. Fourth sister answered the obvious question. What? Maria demanded, her voice hitting an octave that Mother of Eth used to sterilize the grain crops back home. Fourth sister tried to repeat the information, but the human interrupted her. They cut off the 5th little piggy? Maria demanded. Not just the 5th, the 4th too. Oh sweet stars above. This is preposterous. That has always been a 5-star system. Think of how many times I chanted that song as I skipped rope. Think of all the baby's toes that were pinched to the rhyme. She slapped her hands together and stalked out of the communal room. Oh, the Central University is going to hear about this, was the last thing that fourth sister heard as the human left. She stared blankly at the door and realized she was holding her utility rod in front of her defensively. She carefully lowered it and just as carefully raised her frill into a calm position. All evidence indicated that Maria was furious over a technical designation change on an uninhabited system, but that could not be correct. It was patently illogical. She would call her cousin who lived on the mixed colony. If anyone could explain this behavior, it was a Shatar who had to deal with these strange beings her entire life. Humans are strange. Snow play. So it turns out that while I was gone, my kid sister saved up her money from babysitting and bought me this sweet snowboard, human friend Jameson said, his voice full of eagerness. Human friend Jameson was leaning over the cafeteria table eagerly, seemingly heedless of the food on his tray as he gestured at his friend with his fork. The other human seemed completely nonplussed by this, despite the 7 inches of carbon-infused steel being quite capable of being a deadly weapon in the hands of Jameson. Indeed, Kix-ATT Tackle had once seen his friend slay a decently sized predator with a similar implement. Kix-ATT Tackle shifted the 6 limbs he was currently ambulating on in the direction of Jameson and his audience. A tray identical to the ones in front of the humans was suspended lightly between his 2 foremost legs, and on it was balanced his usual liquid nutrients, along with a packet of the human delicacy known as flavored gelatin. The cafeteria had produced a new flavor today, and Kix-ATT Tackle was eager to try it. What better conditions than with human friend Jameson, who also had selected a much larger portion of the food. Hey Kix, have a seat, Jameson greeted him before resuming his presentation to his friends. Thank you, human friend Jameson, Kix-ATT Tackle replied as he set his tray to the left of Jameson's, giving the human maneuvering room. Anyway, Jameson continued, she wants to take me out on Mount Bachelor as soon as I am out of quarantine, and Mom says that I should bring friends. Any takers? There was the usual chorus of disappointed refusals, most of which seemed to center on the fact that the majority of the Marines around him also had plans with their families during that time frame. 2, however, assured Jameson that they were eager to accompany him on his excursion, and they confirmed dates and times of meeting. A few dispersed and Kix-ATT Tackle finished his nutrients. Human friend Jameson, he greeted his companion who was now eagerly spooning the gelatin into his mouth. Do you find the new flavor pleasant? It's okay, Jameson said, dipping his shoulders in a way that indicated either a lack of knowledge or strong emotion. One kind is pretty much like another. I would have to disagree, Kix-ATT Tackle objected. I much prefer the blue flavor. Well, maybe you can get some on leave, Jameson offered. Perhaps. Kix-ATT Tackle considered his next words carefully. Do they have such things at this Mount Bachelor place you spoke of? I think so, Jameson said. Why do you ask? Oh. Kixatitackle prided himself on his ability to read the incredibly flexible human face and noted precisely when Jameson divined his meaning. Do you not wish me to come? Kixatitackle asked. Please remember we have pledged honesty to each other. No, Jameson hurriedly assured him. I would love for you to come. It is just that the facilities are not set up for you yet, and the climate is fairly extreme. Kixatitackle tilted his body to the side curiously, and Jameson activated the wrist-mounted holoprojector all of the humans wore. The skin on his wrist lit up first of a blindingly reflective surface that made Kixatitackle flinch back, and then switched to a rather cozy-looking interior that indeed was fitted for the massive bodies of humans, and not for his own smaller frame. What is the climate? He asked, shuddering at the image of the white crystal ground cover. Well, here is this week's weather data, Jameson said, scrolling through a few more pages. Kixatitackle stared blankly at the display for a moment before turning fully to Jameson's face. There must be some mistake in that data, Kixatitackle said firmly. Otherwise you are telling me you are knowingly exposing your beloved nestmate to prolonged temperatures below the freezing point of water. Jameson laughed. She loves it, bud. You should see her pull the half-pipe. Humans are strange. White water. Where are you going with that flotation device? Quillith asked his friend as the human passed by carrying a currently uninflated raft. Quillith was quite proud of himself for being able to identify the device. After all, emergency safety equipment was not really in the traditional scope of a nutritional anthropologist. However, when one worked with humans, one learned to expand one's horizons. The satellites are finally working over this area, and from the looks of it, there's some awesome whitewater just south of here on the Widowmaker, the human replied with a grin, shifting the giant device easily on one shoulder. Smitty and me are going to try it out. Quillith carefully flexed the legs on one side to tilt his head in the manner that let the human know he was considering his words. White was the term the humans used for their inability to distinguish between the visible color spectrum when several wavelengths were present at one time. How this modified water was uncertain. So why are you doing this? Quillith asked curiously. 'Cause it's going to be fun, the human replied with a wide and eager grin. Hey, you want to come? It should be safe enough. Quillith was sorely tempted to join in the recreation, but every hair on his exoskeleton decided to fully extend at that moment. That is so cute when you do that, the human cried in genuine admiration, and from the way his fingers were twitching Quillith guessed he was fighting the urge to pet the anthropologist with his free hand. I am afraid I must decline, Quillith said. I have to prepare for a presentation. Well, have fun with that, you geek. The human flung the friendly insult at him cheerfully, and Quillith chattered happily at his retreating back. He had worked long and hard to integrate himself into the human's social structure, and that they felt comfortable enough around him to revert to their habitual behavior pleased him to no end. Normally he tried to participate in as much of their recreational activities as he could, but safe enough, paired with fun, usually translated into, there is a greater than 80% chance that I can bring you back alive from this situation. Usually followed by, hey, you can regenerate limbs, right? For the moment Quillith was quite content to go look up whitewater and flotation device in the database for now. Humans are strange.